Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mel Ve, coming to you live on Conscious Consumer Network. It is great to be with you, as always, for our scheduled broadcast of Dragonology. And this is the season finale of Season 3, making it episode 13. 13 episodes in total for each of the seasons of Dragonology. And season finale is all about cultivating compassion and starting with how we can make a change here and now today. Dragonology is an area of study which explores many interrelated areas of study and cross-references information through a vast spectrum of subjects, including history, mythology, archaeology, anthropology, architecture, sculpture, symbolism, art, language, literature, theatre, sport, ritual, and of course, culture. The purpose of Dragonology. Well, why should we study Dragonology? Why even get into this area of study? There's many different reasons, but for the context of what we're doing today, the most important is to know and understand the draconian matrix and to identify the presence and influence of dragons in our culture. Also, to learn about the true nature of our reality by deciphering the deception of the draconian construct. Conscious cognitive understanding of truth and awareness is the highest form of enlightenment, which is why we make a point of deciphering the deception of the dragon and teaching people how to do that for themselves by giving them the basic building blocks. Some of the aspects of the dragon are quite dualistic, which is, kind of hard for people to get their heads around and go, are they good, are they bad? You learn, there's so many contrasting and conflicting stories and beliefs and ideologies about this. But the true nature of the dragon is in fact dualistic, and it's very difficult for us who human beings kind of trying to work it all out to understand, what to kind of think of the whole thing. But some of the basic themes that we've covered off in Dragonology include the fact that dragons have been the creators of our culture. They gave us the arts of writing, of reading, literature, sculpture, architecture, and many more. They're also our destroyers, many of them, of course, behind the wars that go on our planet. They are our gods and our devils, our angels and our demons. They are the bringers of knowledge and wisdom to humanity, our teachers, but also our enslavers. So the ultimate question, of course, is how do we create a better world? And of course, that is by removing the aspects of the draconian construct, which is not compassionate and does not benefit humanity or the greater good. And here's some of the themes that you keep on finding within the Dragonology construct, within the draconian construct. And this isn't terribly positive, but these are all things that we ourselves can change if we change some of the basic programming that we have been sort of imprisoned with. And to understand that, you've got to kind of understand where we sit and how it works. And it's done through a system of hierarchy where we are submissive to draconian entities or dragon entities which we worship and who enslave us to do their bidding and engage in sacrifice and, of course, ritual. And today we'll be going into some of the ritual aspects of the dragon and what we can do to change those rituals. So some of the aspects of our existence which are rooted in ritual are a bit of a surprise to people when we kind of, take into context our entire lifestyles. Just about everything that we enjoy as pastimes or that can be enjoyed as pastimes has been ritualized. And entertainment is obviously one of the biggest ones. Your attention where your attention goes, energy flows. And the dragons want you to pay attention to their rituals so they can harvest your energy. Entertainment is quite simply the way the dragons detain you to grab your attention so they can enter you. Entertainment. So here's some of the aspects of entertainment that are kind of worth looking at because they're very much rooted in ritual. And we've covered this off in previous Dragonology, so please do go have a look or read my book. It covers this all off in detail and gives you an idea of how this plays out within our reality. Sports or games, for example. A good example of this is the Olympics, one of the oldest competitive areas that we have, particularly in the world of sports. This is originally started off as a ritual to Zeus, often where sacrifices were made. And of course, from sports and games, you go into gambling and gaming. And when you play a sport or you play a game, if you're talking about the word play in, say, for example, Dutch, you talk about speel or spelen. That basically is a spell that you put upon yourself or others who are watching you. I don't know if you've ever seen people at a football match, how they go absolutely crazy. And that's like they're under some kind of hypnotic spell, just cheering for the teams to the point where they will beat each other up. If, opposing teams come, often seen what we call football hooliganism and violence. Well, that's a perfect example of people under this crazy spell, obsession with the sport, so obsessed that they will get angry and violent over it. And of course, in theatre, having done speech and drama since I was 7 years old and then went on to do performing arts as a degree, one of the things you learn every single year when you start your performing arts or speech and drama syllabus for the year, they start off with theatre history. And the very first thing you learn in theatre history is that theatre originated with ritual. Theatre is rooted in ritual. That's the same thing you learn every single year. And so performance is also very much a ritualistic thing, be it dance or singing. And many people, of course, are very well aware of just how perverse the music industry is and Hollywood and how you kind of have to sell your soul to the devil to get a contract or to be famous. So that, of course, all ties in. If you want to be big in the performance world or the entertainment arts world, there is a price to pay for it, and it's not a very pleasant one. And then, of course, festivals. Festival comes from the word feast, a big celebration, which is, you normally ritually adorn yourself and go out and party to music or dance. And, of course, partying is very much just a variation of this. And often when you're celebrating at a festival or a party, there's food. Food accompanies the celebrations. And, of course, the concept of the meal is very much a draconian construct that is rooted in ritual. So that's where we're going to go with this today. We're going to talk about the consumption element of what it is we do, okay? And you are what you eat. Our attitude towards food, being how we eat, what we eat, and when we eat, is part of the draconian construct. So the things that we put into our body very much affect our physiological output. And that shouldn't be too hard for anybody to imagine who's ever had to go on a diet or ever lost weight because they've changed their lifestyle. We are very much programmed into poisoning our bodies. And this is not just a case with food. We're also very much programmed into destroying ourselves with pharmaceutical drugs and medication, things like cigarettes and even narcotics. A lot of people destroy themselves in the most horrendous ways. Alcohol consumption, all of that keeps you at a very low vibrational frequency and is very bad for you. And it's kind of like you wonder, how has humanity been so hypnotized that we are actually willingly poisoning ourselves? We put the stuff into our mouths, be it the drugs, be it the medication, be it the food. We willingly put it into our mouths. But why? Why are we destroying ourselves? Why do we willingly and knowingly poison ourselves? It's a part of the draconian construct, all about keeping us sick and at a low vibrational frequency. The less healthy and buoyant you are, the harder it is for them to affect us. Now, one of the aspects of food that isn't terribly difficult to kind of get your head around is the whole process of meal times. Breakfast, lunch, and supper, 3 meals a day. That's how you keep healthy. Or certain nutritionists tell you when you're growing up. You've got to have breakfast because it's the most important meal of the day. And then, of course, several hours later, you have lunch, which normally comes around midday. And then dinner normally happens before you go to bed or around sunset. And it very much is tied into times of the day. I mean, you don't have breakfast when the sun is going down. You have breakfast usually after the sun has come up. So these things are very much, again, tied to the movements of the sun. And anything that's tied to the movements of the sun has a ritualistic nature. And I'll show you some more elements with regards to sun movements and just how poignant this is in our day-to-day reality. But it's not just that. It's the fact that there's 3 meals a day. And actually, there's lots of research going on at the moment to show that instead of 3 meals a day, you should have lots of smaller meals. And in fact, just get rid of the concept of meal times altogether and eat when you're hungry, even if that's once a day. If you're only hungry once a day, perhaps you had a big meal the day before. You don't need so much food the next day. It's okay. You don't have to fall into this programming of breakfast, lunch, and supper, 3 meals a day. And the 3, of course, is very significant because the 3 plays out in elements of ritual in a major way in the form of the Trinity and the triangle, and we'll unpack a little bit of that bag. This is an uncommon knowledge for people who follow this area of research. Of course, this depiction over here being the all-seeing eye in a triangle, which kind of looks like this, and it's normally depicted above the pyramid as a raised capstone, and this is the depiction on the back of the $1 bill. This is the Latin for the New World Order. So what's interesting to notice about religion, and you never find more ritual than you do in the bowels of religion, is that the Trinity turns up in some interesting places, but also the Trinity turns up with some very interesting representations. Now, in the Catholic Church, for example, which supposedly teaches Christianity, you don't really learn kind of Egyptian religions, yet you have the IHS insignia or acronym, which turns up as a symbolic representation in many Catholic artworks and sculptures and ornamentations in their churches. And the IHS is actually representative of the Egyptian Holy Trinity. It's not really a Christian Holy Trinity, it's the Egyptian religion. And from the Christian perspective, the Egyptian religion is supposedly, pagan. So why would you find the Egyptian Holy Trinity turning up? And it's just interesting to notice that, first off, the IHS is representative of the goddess Isis, who gave birth to Horus, and Horus's counterpart, who is Set. Horus being the sun god and Set being the god of night. And the two are supposedly always eternally battling. In fact, the word Horus, if you take the U and you move it in front of the R, you have the word hours. And the hours of the clock are dictated, again, by the movements of the sun. And when you talk about set, you talk about the sun setting. Again, the movements of the sun. That is what most religions are based on. It's a solar or astrological, theological, astrological allegory. So the Christian Holy Trinity is an interesting one because it shows some very interesting depictions. And I love this particular picture because it shows the halo around the Father as being a triangle. Again, indicative symbolically of the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity in Christianity is commonly known as the Father, the Son, being Jesus, and of course the Holy Spirit. Now the Holy Spirit is in fact represented usually as a dove. And that is in and of itself very significant because the bird and dragon allegory are very closely related. There's many reasons why dragons are often depicted with wings, and birds are then symbolically used as their counterpart. But not going there for now, I just want to quickly talk about how the 3 and the sun, because we've spoken about the sun and the movements of the sun, and of course the Trinity, the number 3, and how that ties into the sun. We've also previously spoken about how the dragons gave us our varying ways of doing things in terms of astrology, archaeology, geometry. All these arts were bestowed upon us by the dragon. And what's interesting to notice is that angles on a protractor are measured in degrees. Well, what happens when the sun is hot? You say, oh, it's 50 degrees out there, or it's 100 degrees out there. And it doesn't matter whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, you use the term degrees. Now, what's funny is when you're measuring angles, you also talk about, oh, that's a 90-degree angle, or, a right angle is 90 degrees. It's the same word, the word degree. And when you look at the full circumference of a protractor, it's 360 degrees. Now, what I propose is, and this is just my theory, which seems to make a lot of sense to me, but it's under debate, of course. But people say to me, well, 360 degrees, I thought there's 365 or 366 days in a year, so the protractor surely can't measure the movements of the sun. Well, it absolutely does measure the movements of the sun, because the sun only appears to move for 360 days of the year. At solstice, which happens twice a year, the sun stops moving, or appears to stop moving from the perspective of the human eye, and stays in the same position for 3 days. And this happens twice a year, so that totals 6 days. So 366 minus 6 equals 360. The word solstice means sun stopping. So we're talking about not the stopping of the sun, but the movement of the sun. And that is why we have 360 degrees in a protractor. And again, all of these are divisibles of 3. Now, the sun god allegory is extremely interesting, okay, because Horus, as we've already mentioned, being a sun god, his name referencing hours, is obviously depicted in some artworks as having a solar disk on top. And of course, the serpent and the sun are inextricably linked. Serpent symbolism is, of course, representative of the dragon, and often you find the sun surrounded in this kind of serpent-like motif. Horus himself sometimes depicted with the head of a peregrine falcon, okay? Again, the bird allegory coming in, much like with the Holy Spirit being represented as a dove. But the sun allegory appears in the artwork, religious artwork and iconography pertaining to Jesus, who is himself a sun god. This is supposedly a representation of the sun, and the cross, of course, behind him is a representation of the sun's movement through the course of the sky over solstice and equinox. Of course, the vertical and horizontal lines representing solstice and equinox. Jesus has always been assimilated to the sun, which is why he's known as the Son of God. In various artworks, you can often see Jesus with like rays behind his head, or a halo, which of course is a solar disk. Now, there's a lot of different rituals which go on pertaining to the sun, and we've spoken about sacrifice and all sorts through the course of our Dragonology. And many of these serpent deities are kind of assimilated with the sun. As we've shown here, when you're kind of looking at Horus, you can see, okay, there's the sun, there's the serpent. All right, you can see how they kind of tie in the iconography. But what most people don't realize is that the sun has always been an allegory which is representative of the serpent or the dragon gods. And in South America, we've got the winged serpent, the flying serpent. Of course, again, we talk about the bird symbolism which comes in here, because birds typically are the creatures that have wings. The feathered serpent, birds typically have feathers. And this, of course, being the sun god offering, which is where they sacrifice a human and rip out his heart while it's still beating and, hold it up to the sun. Very dramatic, but it very much has always been a case of these sacrifices have been done in order to appease the gods, honor the gods, and the gods are often represented with solar allegories because they are in fact dragons, and dragon and serpents are symbolic representations. Well, serpents are symbolic representations of the dragon, and so very much is the sun a symbolic representation of the dragon. And everything to do with the sun, including the movements of the sun, everything ties into Dragonology, the numerology, on many multi-layered aspects. Now, one of the things that we kind of, do just by the way, people don't really question it. When we are creating our meals, we, put them through many processes. Some people buy very processed foods, which have been already processed before they get to us. Some of them are packaged and tinned. And sometimes when we get home, we still, process a little more in a process called cooking. And it's kind of strange because, we pull out meat out of a packet, throw it onto a barbecue or into a frying pan or into the oven to roast. No one really stops to think why. In fact, sometimes raw meat is actually served in the form of sushi or carpaccio dishes where the meat is very rare and it's actually seen as a delicacy. But there has been a long tradition of cooking and food preparation. Now, it's interesting to notice that no other species besides human beings engage in the process of cooking and heating food. And it's a costly process. You've got to cut down trees to get the wood, for example, to cook the meat, or, pay for gas and electricity instead of on an outdoor barbecue. And this form of food preparation is rooted in something called a holocaust, also known as a burnt offering. These holocaust or burnt offering rituals are just, very much part of the draconian construct. In fact, we should never be cooking our food. The raw vegans will tell you that the healthiest way to eat your food is just, straight from nature. Don't cook it at all. But yet we engage in these processes which deliberately destroy the food that we eat, be it meat or vegetable. And of course, the whole concept of the burnt offering is absolutely rooted in ritual, okay? They used to sacrifice animals and then put them onto a platform and burn them. And then they would often eat them. In fact, I had a friend who used to fly airplane loads of supplies into, she was a pilot, she flew airplane loads of supplies into war-torn parts of Africa. And being very fit as pilots are, she would often go jogging in the mountains, and they would tell her there's cannibalistic tribes that live in the mountains. But whatever you do, if you come across any of them, just act mad. If you act mad, they won't eat you because they think that they will go mad too. And that's very much a process that has been going on for a very long time, is that people believe that when they cook the animal, they get rid of its spirit, so it doesn't become part of you. And then it's kind of safe to eat. You don't take on the qualities of the animal. But no, it doesn't matter. Even if you're eating cooked meat, you still are what you eat. The whole concept of ritual sacrifice is nothing new to those people who follow Dragonology. And in fact, there's kind of always some element of sacrifice that plays in somewhere. Ritual and sacrifice are inextricably linked. In fact, sacrifice is a ritual. It happens over and over again in various ways. And if it's not a direct sacrifice in terms of a murdering of an animal or a human, which happens every day, by the way, there are various other symbolic allegories which are representative of a sacrifice that most people are completely unaware of. Ritual sacrifice is defined as an offer. Offer, interestingly enough, if you take the double F and turn it into a PHIR, with the serpent root word ophi, but also offer is the Hebrew word for gold. And it was initially gods. So rituals defined as offer, surrender, give up, suffer to be lost. Sacrifice is defined as the act of giving up one thing for another, something given up for the sake of another. Okay, so we give up, Lent is a good idea, giving up food, we sacrifice food, fasting or something like that for reverence of God or for the praise of God, or to find good favor with God, or whatever the case may be. But it's usually a case of something given up for the sake of another. Now, ritual cannibalism is a form of sacrifice, and the cooking of meat is very much rooted in ritual cannibalism, as it's believed in these cultures that we take on the qualities of what we eat. And again, I said, you are what you eat. And cooking supposedly removes these qualities or traits of an animal or a human being, which is why they cooked the people or burnt them. But yeah, some cultures that do engage in cannibalism even still eat the meat raw. But the process of cooking is very much rooted in ritual. And here's some artworks of cannibalism in rituals. This one shows it as being something done by primitive tribes. And you'll notice that the slightly more Caucasian colored people are the ones that are being slaughtered, while it seems it's the darker people that are doing the slaughtering. And this is very much an indication, I think, a painting from a Western perspective of cannibalism being something that, uncivilized tribes do. But that's not particularly true in the broader sense of the term, because in fact, if you have a look throughout history, cannibalism has been going on, and it's still done today, and it's usually done within very elite circles. And you'll find these artworks in various places of elites having feasts of human flesh as part of their ritual festival celebrations. And this is actually a very old artwork which you can find at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, which is a very interesting library that contains a lot of these ancient artworks that give away a lot of interesting allegories. Now, eating and feasting are considered to be a ritual aspect. I want to just take a moment here to have a look at some of the words with the word eat actually in it. And it's interesting because you find these words have so many multi-layered symbolic references within the Dragonology construct. Of course, meat being one of them. Interesting to notice the word meat. We don't talk about we eat a pig. We talk about we eat meat, as if that's okay, but you're actually eating a murdered animal, a farmed murdered animal. And of course, we heat the food in the process of cooking. When it gets hot, as we spoke about with the sun, we sweat. And the sun, of course, if it's raining or shining, we reference it as the weather. We've spoken about birds and feathers, the feathered serpent. Beatification being a ritual process by which many popes are turned into saints. First, they go through a process of beatification, and then they're canonized and they become saints. Again, all ritual, got the word eat in it. Interesting, this one, create, and of course, creator. The or, of course, being a dragon root word. And of course, the word great, as in Alexander the Great. And if you understand the royal Alexander the Great was absolutely part of that royal angelic dragon bloodline. And Alexander the Great's work was, he supposedly conquered many different places and was supposedly a famous war hero. But if you look at Roman depictions of him, you might often find him with the depiction of an aegis on his chest, being the Gorgon's head, the Gorgon Medusa. And then, of course, beat. You beat someone at a game or a competition in games and sport. Of course, we spoke about that very much ritual allegory. Or, of course, to physically beat someone up in a war. You beat someone in war. Again, we spoke about that being part of the draconian construct. And of course, the enemy is seen as a threat. If you go into war, the enemy is a threat to you. We talk about how the threat of terrorism. Of course, the word threat has the word eat in it. And of course, defeat. If you're defeated in war or defeated in a game, got the word eat in there. Then treat. Halloween, one of the biggest ritual nights of the year, being the end of the harvest season. And of course, what do you do on Halloween? You go trick or treating, okay? Trick or treat. The word treat has the word eat in. Of course, you treat yourself when you eat something nice, maybe a pudding or a cake or a dessert. And then, of course, the word meat. Very interesting, the word meat. Leather, of course. To animals, very much tying into the meat theme. And then if you've been to war and you want to settle, you sign a treaty. Got the word eaten again. And a ritual wouldn't be a ritual if it was not repeated. In fact, the very nature of a ritual means that it has repetitive elements in. Otherwise, it would be impossible to recognize as a ritual. As you already spoke about, the word theater has the word eat in it, and theatre was rooted in ritual. And wheat. It is the dragons who gave us the arts of sowing seed and reaping fruits from the earth. Agrarian cults were the first to engage in rituals and sacrifice. And of course, wheat is one of the things that we were taught to harvest and grow by the dragons. And of course, we use wheat in all sorts of symbolic treats, such as cakes and bread. Again, all very ritualistic. Murder and sacrifice. Well, murder versus sacrifice. It's interesting. Being a meat eater means that you consent to the murder and sacrifice of animals. And, whether you say, they're slaughtered or it's still murder, and it's still a sacrifice ultimately. These animals are given up for one purpose or another. It says, we spoke about sacrifice as the giving up of something for another. So we slaughter these animals. Why? So that we can have a meal. It's not just, we kill them because they're a threat. Okay, it's actually a giving up of these creatures so that we can feed. Okay, and it is ultimately murder because we are taking the lives of these animals against their will, and there is really no difference between murder and sacrifice. Ultimately, particularly when it comes to the annihilation of live sentient beings. And again, I'll say it. Being a meat eater means that you consent to the murder and sacrifice of animals. Now, the opposite of eating, of course, is fasting, feasting and fasting. Two very different aspects of ritual, one being the complete diametric opposite of the other, one being the gorging on of food, and the other one being the abstaining of consumption. And we feast. Feasting is part of many ritual celebrations. Of course, the Christmas feast being one of the most obvious. People go out and they buy a turkey and they make cranberry sauce and salads and all sorts. And then, of course, you've got Easter. Easter being the time when we gorge ourselves on chocolate Easter eggs. As you already mentioned, Halloween, the kids run around and get trick-or-treat and get candy, and, they get to feast on candy. And birthdays, of course, you get to feast on lovely birthday cake. And, of course, feasts turn up at various religious holidays and celebratory occasions as part of a ritual allegory. And then, of course, fast. It's interesting to notice that the word feast and fast are etymologically cognizant with each other. In fact, if you take the E out of feast, you have fast. That's because they are two sides of the same coin. They are both rituals, just working in opposite directions. Fasting is the ritual act of abstaining from all or some kinds of food and drink, especially as a spiritual or religious observance. One of the most commonly known feasts is known as Ramadan. Ramadan is the Islamic holy month of fasting, during which Muslims may not eat or drink from sunrise to sunset. Again, it's got to do with the movements of the sun. Know the significance of the sun. That is how they mark Ramadan, okay, the hours, because it is an homage to the sun god. Whether you want to believe it or not, that is what it is. And there are approximately, as of 2015, there are approximately 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide who engage in this process of fasting for 40 days during the sunlight hours. And it's, that's got to have a massive impact when you're engaging in a ritual for that long that has that much of a physiological effect on you. And it's done by almost 2 billion Muslims worldwide. Now, the concepts of dragon and meat are inextricably interlinked. The biological composition of human beings is not geared towards meat eating. It is the dragons who have programmed us into meat eating or eating of animal products. We simply are not designed to chew. We're simply not designed to hunt. We are simply not designed to digest animal products. That's a biological fact. In fact, dragons eat human beings, and this has been a story and a fact that has been played out throughout history. that these creatures eat us. We are their bacon and their steaks, although I'm told that they eat us raw. They don't even bother cooking us. They eat human beings. So what they have gotten us to do in turn is to, we are made in the image of our creators, which is the dragons, and they have gotten us to consume meat, even though we are not supposed to be eating meat. And there are many depictions of that comes about when you're referencing the draconian elements. Saturn, also known as Satan, known as the devil, that great dragon, the old serpent in the book of Revelations. This is a picture by Peter Paul Rubens, an initiated artist who was very much endowed with the symbolic knowledge of occultism and ritualism. From 1636, a picture of Saturn devouring his son, okay? And gods or dragons are often depicted devouring humans and infants. But what's even more interesting to notice is that we, as human beings, have been programmed by the dragons to eat meat, and in some cases eat other humans if you're initiated into those kind of circles. But we're actually not meat eaters. You just have to look at the way our teeth looks and the way our hands look. Our hands are actually designed for picking fruit from trees. This is what opposable thumbs are for. It's to pick the fruit from trees and to eat them, not for ripping. We don't have these long talons for ripping, and we don't run particularly fast to chase down animals. The whole concept of hunting and fishing is something that was given to us by the dragons as one of the arts that we are engaged in. But it's certainly not something that we are naturally meant to do. Were it not for draconian intervention in humanity, we would all be vegan. We would not be eating animal products at all. In fact, when you start to look at animals who do eat meat, you can see forepaws with claws, okay, and great sharp fangs, right? They've got very sharp fangs. But when you start going on to the animals that are less on the meat-eating side, in fact, herbivores, for example, look at this donkey. There's no fangs. It's very blunted teeth. Again, frugivores. This is an ape, very similar to human teeth. That is really what human beings should be eating, is fruits, vegetables, and nuts. We're not designed for hunting. We're not designed for meat eating. Even physiologically, our colons are simply not designed to digest and metabolize meat. It causes a lot of health problems. Meat consumption is physiologically wrong. That's the simple truth of it. You only need to look at the teeth. And as someone pointed out to me, the fact that human jaws move from side to side, that is normally something that is only done by animals that grind and crush their food. For example, the herbivores, not for animals who rip their food. A carnivore can only open its mouth open and shut, not from side to side. And that's proof that we are not meant to be eating meat. A canine, I beg your pardon, a carnivore can only grip its meat and tear and rip. It cannot get the side-to-side jaw movement. And that is the proof that human beings are, in fact, herbivores. Meat eating is biologically, physiologically wrong. So, as I say, we need to get over it. There are many illnesses that occur from animal products. In fact, up to 80% of all incidents of bowel cancer is a result of eating animal products. And one of the ways in which we can get rid of bowel cancer is by alkalizing our body, and that means eliminate animal products completely and have a largely plant-based diet. In fact, meat greatly increases the risk of heart or cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular diseases are the #1 cause of death globally. More people die annually from cardiovascular disease than any other cause. In fact, up to 30% of all deaths globally are caused by heart disease or cardiovascular disease. So we need to make a choice. Do we want to have sick care or health care? Just by growing your own fruit and vegetables and consuming what you can grow in your own garden, as opposed to running out with guns and spears and shooting animals, or going down to the butcher and buying neatly little pre-packaged portions of mutilated and murdered animal, which we then put into a fire or an oven or a pan and grill and cook. It's a simple choice. Do we want to be sick or do we want to be healthy? Is to go vegan. It is the most compassionate answer. I mean, if you're an animal lover, and I certainly am, it's almost incomprehensible that we, at this time on this planet, are still in a place where we willingly and knowingly consume meat. And it's almost as if it's a subliminal way of telling us, yes, you can be violent because, meat eating is violent. If you've ever seen any of those videos on YouTube, and I do suggest you go watch some of them of what these animals go through, it's not a compassionate process. It's a very violent process. And it's not just for, the health benefits or showing the poor animals. It's actually, meat eating is detrimental to the planet. Okay. Here's 5 reasons why you should go vegan. First off, animals feel and fear pain. They don't like to be hurt. Meat is worse for global warming than cars. Provable fact. Environmentally, it is disastrous. If it's wrong to eat a dog, then it is wrong to eat a chicken or any other animal for that matter. Eating meat increases your risk of heart disease by 50%. And of course, the most important and the thing that really hits me the hardest is the grain used for livestock could feed the world's hunger. Okay, so all those people who are not getting fed, where is their food going? Oh, it's going to feed the animals, which we then turn into hamburgers. It's kind of a somewhat impractical way of going about alleviating the problems on our planet. So in order to end poverty and hunger, quite simply, the most compassionate and easiest thing for us to do is to stop eating an animal-based diet and start eating a plant-based diet. See, on an animal-based diet, only 35% of the world is fed, okay? And on a plant-based diet, 100% of the world is fed because all the grains that went to feed, we don't need to have huge amounts of cows being bred artificially and dairy cows being artificially impregnated for their milk, etc. So if you don't want to do it for the animals, do it for the thousands that are dying of starvation. 1 pound of vegetable uses 25 gallons of water. 1 pound of beef uses 5,214 gallons of water. And going vegan really can feed the world. So breaking free of the draconian construct. In order to break free from the draconian construct, we need to respect all species of sentient beings. If we treat animals like food, we create the precedents for our own harvesting by the dragons. The consumption of animal products makes your body acidic and it lowers your vibrational frequency. Meat is toxic for our bodies and our energetics. And in order to vibrate at a high frequency, we need to eliminate animal products from our diet. Dragon energetics. It's the dragons who got us to eat meat, and they did this in order to lower our vibrational frequency, to get us to be so low that they could harvest our energy, because ultimately it's all about energetic harvesting. If they're not physically eating us in their rituals, they're harvesting our energy, and these dragons or archons cannot harvest our energy if our frequency is high. They just simply cannot stand the frequency. They rely on a low vibrational frequency in order to harvest our energy. So dragons do to us what we do to animals. And this is, of course, depicted in many different artworks. This turns up in the logo of the Alfa Romeo motor vehicle sign. The dragon eating humans, because dragons do eat humans and they eat us, and they've taught us to eat other animals. They taught a non-animal eating creature to eat animals. They have programmed us into it. They've programmed us out of our compassion, and they've programmed us into poisoning ourselves, and they've programmed us into a state of mind where we willingly lower our vibrational frequency. Ultimately, we need to cultivate compassion. Deconstruct the draconian construct by cultivating love and compassion for your fellow human beings and all sentient beings on this planet. Love and respect all sentient beings. Love the creatures that share this planet with us. Don't farm them, don't harm them, and certainly let's stop eating them. Right, that's all from me tonight, folks. Thank you very much for those people who have tuned in. If you have missed any of the previous episodes of Dragonology, you're welcome to pick up on Dragonology Season 3 on our dedicated archive and website. We, of course, have Dragonology Season 1 and 2, all have 13 episodes in them, so please go back and watch those if you've missed anything and you wish to learn a little bit more about deciphering the deception of the dragon. You can, of course, pick up my book, Dragonology Book 1 Spellbreaker, available on the dragonology.info website. And you can get a €5 discount if you use the discount code Dragonology S3. That's Dragonology S for season, Dragonology S3, Season 3. And there are various things there you can also download. We have a new documentary out called Secrets of the Kalahari, which can be downloaded from the site too. So please, guys, go check it out. Support our work. This is all publicly funded, and we obviously could use your support. If you have any questions, please get in touch with me, Mel Ve. Write to me at info@consciousconsumernetwork.tv. I do respond to all mails that come in. Check out our broadcast guide on consciousconsumernetwork.tv. We'll be returning with a season 4 very shortly, so keep an eye on the guide so that you don't miss it. All our shows are archived on ccn.media, so check out our specially dedicated archive website to catch up on all the other shows that we have previously broadcast, as well as the various past episodes of Dragonology. And of course, CCN is a publicly supported network. Please support our network support fund. And as always, we thank you for supporting free and independent media. My name has been Mel Ve. It has been a pleasure to bring you this season of Dragonology, and I look forward to being back. Take care.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire, the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.